Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Wandering Poet Cafe. Today we have a poetry analysis for you of Walt Whitman's Song of Myself. This was a poem first published in 1855 to kick off Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman, and it really is the foundational poem of American literature. It was written at a time when America was a rural nation going through an industrial revolution on the rise into this status as a world power. It was a pastoral era, and Walt Whitman laid out this vision of individualism that came to define American thought and the American identity. So it is aptly titled Song of Myself. So first of all, it's all about exalting the self and breaking free of traditions. And so it's written in free verse. Walt Whitman was a pioneer of free verse with Leaves of Grass. And so he's not conforming to traditional norms of meter and rhyme scheme. And the whole idea, right, of the American experiment, especially back in the 19th century, was breaking free of the old ways, customs, traditions, institutions of Europe and embarking on this new identity of adventure. And also, right, individualism, the most important thing. And the first line is, I celebrate myself and sing myself. But here's the thing about this poem. It's not just about the individualism of self-centeredness. It's about taking the concept of the self and expanding it to include not just the me, myself, as he does refer to it in the poem, but a more universal and even cosmic sense of self and of one of the most famous lines in this poem is, I contain multitudes. And so that is something that Walt Whitman explores. It's sometimes referred to as the egotistical sublime, where instead of losing yourself into a state of oneness with everything, as maybe a more Buddhist or Taoist or Eastern approach would do, this is sort of expanding and enlarging the sense of self to include all things. Now, an interesting thing about Song of Myself is it is actually an epic poem of sorts, sort of a pocket epic, whereas an epic poem tells the story of an epic hero who embodies the values of their civilization and goes on this hero's journey. In this case, Walt Whitman is sort of redefining that for a modern and American context, where this epic hero is really the everyman, and the journey is the expansion of the self through all these elements of nature and society, and using that vision and that totality to usher in democracy. And so democracy is the value of the civilization, which in this case is America, the USA. And so Walt Whitman's poem is a sort of version of an epic poem for the everyman, for America, for democracy. And like all epic poems, it has to include a genealogy of sorts, and in this case, Walt Whitman ties back from his self to his parents, to their parents, and then to the air and the soil and the land. And so that connection to nature and the cosmos is a big part of this poem. And then he also identifies himself as an individual, the biographical Walt Whitman, and he's 37 years old. Nature without check with original energy. This poem, again, is all about unbounded nature, propulsive energy, the original, abandoning the old schools and creeds, and coming with this fresh American new, breaking the new wood, as Ezra Pound said that Walt Whitman did with his poems. And this is the ultimate iconic Walt Whitman poem, and really the poem of American culture. Another element all epic poems have is an invocation to the muse, and once again Walt Whitman takes that and turns it on its head here a little bit in his own way, where instead of invoking a muse, he just invokes the atmosphere itself for breath and for inspiration, right? My respiration and inspiration. And so the point here, as far as the muse is concerned, is he wants to get in contact with everything. The common air that bathes the globe, the leaves of grass, right? Leaves of grass is a metaphor for each individual person uniting in the whole, in democracy, and his vision is very much that of expanding the society to be this large family. And so going along with that, there's also this delighting in the senses and in sensory perception and experience and being in contact with people and with things and with the natural world. And he describes the self as the song of me rising from bed and meeting the sun. So there is this kind of poetic, cosmic sense of self. in terms of Song of Myself. And so finally, going along with that, there is this emphasis on direct experience as the thing that provides real knowledge. Later in the poem, he also says, "Me and mine do not convince by arguments, we convince by our presence. And the damp of the night drives deeper into my soul." And that's, again, another very American concept of that direct experience and the power being in the hands of the everyman. And so this is an amazing poem. It goes on for 52 sections. I've just done a brief annotation and analysis here of the first 2 sections. But Song of Myself, one of the great poems of all time. It is a pocket epic for America. And if you want to see me read or hear me read the first 10 sections of it, you can click on the link. And I also have a playlist of Walt Whitman poem readings if you want to check that out. This is the Wandering Poet Cafe. Thank you for listening. Subscribe and leave a comment if you want to see more poetry readings and analysis videos. Also, the publishing process, as I'm going to make some videos about that coming up too. Thank you, everybody.